All right, let's dive right into this explainer. I want you to take a deep breath with me right now, and let's set the scene for one of the absolute greatest, most dramatic stories in all of human history. We're going to travel back in time to explore a life that completely reshaped the world, and it starts in the most unlikely of places.
Picture this. You're standing on a cold, windswept hill somewhere in Europe. The wind is quiet, the sky above you is this heavy, oppressive gray, and standing just in front of you, looking out at the world, is a young man. He's not particularly tall. He doesn't immediately look all that powerful or intimidating, but inside his mind, something intense is burning. It's a fire, a dream, a relentless question that is quite literally about to change history forever.
So it really begs the question, right? How exactly did a boy from a tiny, quiet island rise up to become one of the most famous and powerful people who ever lived? I mean, how does that even happen?
Section 1. The boy from Corsica, born on a quiet island.
So the year is 1769. We're on the quiet Mediterranean island of Corsica, where Napoleon is born into a proud but pretty simple family. This was miles away from the grand, bustling cities of Europe. Now, two major influences shaped his early life. First, you have his dad, Carlo, a lawyer who would eventually have to make a really heart-wrenching choice for his son's future. And second, his mom, Letizia. She was tough as nails, a deeply strong, serious woman. She raised her kids with strict discipline, basically teaching them that life isn't easy and you have to fight for absolutely everything you want. Young Napoleon just soaked this all in. He was a quiet, serious kid whose mind was always going a million miles an hour, spending his time obsessively reading books about ancient history, great leaders, and massive wars.
9. Just 9 years old. That's when everything changes. His father makes the massive decision to send this quiet little boy far, far away from his island home to a military school in France. Think about that for a second. 9 years old, suddenly stepping into this powerful, loud, wealthy country that is just overflowing with unfamiliar culture.
You could imagine, France was an incredibly lonely place for a kid like him. He's got this thick Corsican accent, and the other boys just relentlessly laughed at him. They called him names for being small, which is funny because he was actually average height for the time, but they made sure he knew every single day that he was an outsider. But you know what? He didn't cry. He didn't give up. Instead, he channeled all that isolation into intense, laser-like focus. He completely devoured mathematics, geography, and history. He started to realize that being different wasn't actually a weakness, it was his superpower. He was slowly building this quiet, unshakable confidence.
Section 2. Rise in the Revolution. Chaos becomes an opportunity.
By the time Napoleon graduates from military school in Paris at 16, he's stepping into a literal powder keg. By the late 1780s, the French Revolution is in full swing. The poor were starving, they were furious that the rich were just living lavishly in these massive palaces, the old world was violently falling apart right in front of them, and the streets were filled with noise and fear. But in the middle of all this absolute chaos, Napoleon realized a fundamental truth. In times of great change, the people who act the quickest and think the clearest are the ones who come out on top. He was brave, he made incredibly fast decisions, and honestly, he inspired everyone around him.
24. I mean, think about that number. Because of this unmatched clarity in the chaos, he achieved something that sounds almost made up. At just 24 years old, this once lonely, mocked outsider from a tiny island becomes a general in the French army. It's completely mind-blowing.
Look at how fast this all happens. He graduates at 16. The revolution breaks out in 1789. By 24, he's a general, winning these major, spectacular battles in places like Italy and Egypt. The French people start looking at him as an absolute hero. They trust him. And then in 1799, he makes this bold, dangerous, lightning-fast move to simply take control of the French government. This wasn't your normal election. It was a highly calculated seizure of power, and, well, it worked.
Section 3. The Emperor's Crown, taking power into his own hands.
Okay, picture the scene. It's 1804, inside the breathtaking Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. The room is packed to the brim with generals, politicians, and royals from all across the globe. And in a ceremony unlike anything history had seen in ages, he does something with just sheer audacity. He doesn't wait for the Pope or anyone else to crown him. He literally takes the crown and places it on his own head. He didn't look at anyone else in the room. He only looked forward. To him, this wasn't the peak of the mountain. It was just the starting line.
And wow, what an empire he builds. He controls most of Europe, bringing this strict order to a continent that had literally been drowning in chaos for years. He builds roads, he builds schools, and he establishes legal systems that actually still exist today. People deeply respected him, and yeah, a lot of them feared him. But underneath all of this incredible progress, there was a dangerous, insatiable hunger growing inside him. He always wanted more.
Section 4. The Russian Disaster. The greatest mistake of his life.
600,000. It's 1812, and Napoleon's incredible winning streak is about to hit a massive frozen wall. He decides to invade Russia, taking an army of over 600,000 soldiers eastward. We're talking about the largest army in the history of Europe at that time, marching straight into a vast and totally unforgiving country.
Here's how this absolute nightmare unfolds. The massive army pushes east, but the Russians, they don't even fight them directly. Instead, they pull back and burn absolutely everything. Their own villages, their own food, leaving literally nothing for Napoleon's men to survive on. By the time Napoleon finally gets to Moscow, the city is completely empty. And then, the brutal, unimaginable Russian winter sets in. What follows is a tragic, horrifying retreat. These soldiers weren't dying in some glorious battle. They were dying from freezing temperatures, starvation, and pure exhaustion. More than half of that grand army never made it back. And this disaster, it broke something fundamental inside his empire.
Section 5. Exile and Final Legacy. The Cracking of the Great Wall.
Now there's blood in the water. Sensing his weakness, the enemies of France, England, Prussia, Austria, Russia, they all close in fast. These final years were just a rapid-fire roller coaster. By 1814, they enter Paris. For the first time, he actually has to give up power, and he's exiled to a small Mediterranean island called Elba. But of course, he wasn't done. Just 10 months later, he shocks the world, escapes, returns to France, and the very soldiers sent to stop him end up joining him. It was this brief, shining comeback, but it all came crashing down in June 1815 at Waterloo, where he lost his final battle to the English general Wellington. With nowhere left to run, he's exiled to the tiny, remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. And that's where he died, quietly, 6 years later in 1821, at just 51 years old.
So, the boy from Corsica, the outsider, the general, the emperor, is gone. But it leaves us with this huge question to consider today. What can we actually take away from this remarkable, highly complicated life?
We really have to balance two stark realities here. First, obviously, is the cost. We have to acknowledge he was nowhere near a perfect man. He made terrible mistakes that caused immense suffering and pain through his wars. War is just never simple. But against all that, we see the drive, the undeniable power of a person who flat out refused to accept that the world had already decided his future for him. He firmly believed, down to his core, that effort and knowledge could completely rewrite a life. Think back to where this all started. He was laughed at. He spoke with the wrong accent. He came from the wrong place. A lot of you out there might know exactly what it feels like to be an outsider, to be told you just don't belong. But Napoleon used intense study, relentless effort, and this iron will to completely rewrite his destiny.
And honestly, that connects directly to you, right here, right now, as you engage with this explainer. Knowledge and effort can change a life. You are on your own journey of discovery. Every new concept you grasp, every sentence you understand, is a small, powerful victory. Just like that young boy reading history books on a quiet island, your focus right now is building your own future.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. If the ultimate outsider can rewrite history, what will you build with your own journey of discovery? Keep learning, keep pushing forward, and I will see you in the next explainer.